22nd of September 2008, the very SWAT team that I founded in the 1970s killed my son-in-law in my presence. Inspector Daryl Gates had founded the idea of SWAT following the Watts riots in the 60s. I brought that back to Utah and founded the first SWAT team in Davis County's history, and the idea was to neutralize, to diffuse. We would have considered it a total failure if anybody got hurt. My deputy served over 16,000 warrants while I was a sheriff and as a peace officer. Nobody was ever reported hurt, no officers, no civilians.
The police are creating these circumstances. They're creating the volatility, they're creating the violence, they're creating the very thin margin for error.
I'm always most drawn to stories about people, and I think even stories that end up reflecting larger, more complex issues are so much more effective when they're told through personal stories. So I was always most interested, and Scott was always most interested in hearing Dub's story as a way to try to understand these complex issues. And Dub's the perfect spokesman for a lot of these because he's both been a law enforcement member of the law enforcement community that set up some of these programs to try and keep the public safe, and he's also been on the other side as a victim.
When the police make a mistake and shoot someone who isn't really a threat, they're always forgiven because it's the volatility of the situation. People on the receiving end of these raids aren't given that consideration.
My son had been killed in 2008 by a SWAT team that I founded some 35 years earlier. And we talked and visited and talked about some of the materials that I had accumulated over the years as an investigator. And Scott and Brad took a trip together. They were friends before, colleagues before, filmmakers. And I think of a trip up to the Northwest, they talked about the possibility of doing a documentary film, and Scott called me and asked me to talk with him, visit with him, and the next thing I knew, they were at my place trying to gather all the information they could, and they came with cameras, and Brad got involved, and the two of them took it from there. I think documentary filmmaking, what I've seen and what I've observed, there's so many special people that are doing such a great job. I'm inspired. I'm glad to be a part of this. They called and wanted me to come and be here for the screenings, to be able to screen at a place as prestigious as this in the center of activity in Washington, D.C.
It's a really inspirational, somewhat daunting, but overall appropriate kind of atmosphere to show films like this, to talk about films like this that come from these issues that are shaping our lives.
The objective of our entire profession is to bring peace. Sometimes peace is purchased with violence.